I never thought I'd be writing this story, but I need to get it off my chest. My best friend of nearly 20 years is spiraling out of control, and I just had to make one of the hardest decisions of my life. We met in college, sharing a dorm room and countless late-night study sessions. Those nights would turn into deep conversations about life, love, and our dreams. We helped each other through bad breakups, celebrated our achievements, and even traveled together before life got complicated with jobs and families. She was my maid of honor, and I was hers. Our bond seemed unbreakable. Life was good for a long time. My husband and her husband, Mike, became close friends too. They bonded over their shared love of sports and spent hours in Mike's metal workshop, sharing beers and swapping stories about work and life. They'd go on fishing trips together and help each other with home projects. My friend had a daughter from a previous relationship, a bright 12-year-old who became part of our extended family. Mike had been her dad since she was 4, and anyone could see how much he adored her as his own. My husband and I always treated her like our niece, including her in our outings and holiday celebrations. Then about a month ago, everything fell apart. Mike told my friend he wanted a divorce. When she told me, I could see the pain in her eyes. She confessed that for the last 6 months their marriage had been rocky. The problem started when she took a big promotion at her company 3 years ago. The new role came with significant responsibilities and required her to travel 3 to 4 months out of the year. Even when she wasn't traveling, she worked late nights, early mornings, and weekends. It seemed like she was always on the clock. My friend had always been ambitious, climbing the corporate ladder with impressive determination. Mike, on the other hand, ran his own metal workshop from their property. His work was demanding too, but in a different way. Despite both of them working hard, her income had surpassed his, though I wouldn't call her the breadwinner. They both contributed significantly to their household. Mike had become increasingly unhappy with her job. He felt neglected, like their relationship was taking a back seat to her career. He'd asked her multiple times to either take a position with less travel or find a new job altogether. She'd always promised to consider it, but would put it off, hoping he'd eventually drop the subject. This created a growing rift between them. The breaking point came when my friend extended a business trip without telling Mike, forgetting about a family vacation they had planned. When she returned home, she found that Mike had packed his belongings and moved most of his shop and tools into storage. He hadn't given her any warning. He'd acted like everything was fine until that moment. When she called me, she kept saying, "I didn't think he'd do it," over and over. Her initial sadness quickly turned to anger when Mike made it clear there was no chance of reconciliation. He said he'd reached his limit, feeling that she'd checked out of their relationship since taking the new position. He believed they no longer did anything as a family, that she didn't make time to talk when she traveled, and that she prioritized socializing with coworkers over him. Their intimacy had disappeared, and whenever he voiced his concerns, she dismissed them. I understood both sides. My friend was passionate about her career, but her marriage was falling apart. She didn't want to choose between them, but Mike had already made the choice for her. What happened next, though, would change everything and make me question whether I ever really knew my best friend at all. Everything became much worse after what happened 3 weeks into their separation. Their daughter was splitting time between Mike's apartment and their old house where my friend stayed. It was Mike's weekend with their daughter, and he usually brought her back on Sunday evenings. My friend went on a drinking binge and completely lost track of what day it was. She thought it was Saturday when it was actually Sunday. Mike showed up with their daughter and walked into an absolute nightmare. My friend was in the hot tub with 2 younger men, all of them drunk. Though nothing explicit was happening, the scene was chaos. Empty bottles everywhere, clothes scattered around, and my friend could barely string a sentence together. When Mike walked in, my friend started screaming at him, saying it wasn't Sunday yet, her words all slurred. The young men looked uncomfortable and started gathering their things to leave. Mike, trying to keep his composure, quickly got their daughter back to his truck so she wouldn't see the worst of it. He was furious but stayed calm for their daughter's sake. My friend didn't stop her outburst. She kept yelling obscenities and accusations, completely unaware of what day it was. Mike managed to get their daughter out without her seeing too much, but the damage was done. The next day, my friend had no memory of what happened. She'd sent Mike horrible texts while she was drunk. Messages so vile and personal that when Mike showed them to my husband, who then showed them to me, I felt sick. She'd called Mike a failure, accused him of never loving her, and made crude comments about his manhood. It was like all her buried anger came out in a flood of poison. That incident was the final straw for Mike. He decided to fight for full custody of their daughter and child support. He wasn't just angry anymore. He was done. My friend tried to apologize, but there was no going back. Their daughter, caught in this mess, started preferring to stay with Mike, feeling more stable with him. This is where things got complicated for me. My husband wanted me to cut her off completely. He called her terrible things, a bad mother, self-absorbed. He said he didn't want me getting pulled into her drama. Every time I insisted she'd turn things around and just needed help, he'd shut me down, saying this was who she really was. I know a lot of his reaction came from Mike telling him things, and I get it. He's loyal to his friend. But it's different for me. My friend and I have a history that goes back before either of us met our husbands. I wasn't excusing her behavior, but it felt wrong to abandon her when she needed support the most. She asked me to go out with her a few times, saying she was lonely. I went once without telling my husband because I knew what he'd say. I just wanted to talk to her face to face, to see if I could help somehow. When I finally told my husband we'd met up, he was furious. He accused me of hiding things from him, which, okay, I did, but only because I knew he wouldn't understand. He said if I didn't cut her off, we'd have problems too. I felt trapped between two worlds. On one side was my husband, my rock for the past decade. On the other was my best friend, who was like a sister to me. Cutting her out felt like betraying part of myself, but things were about to get even more complicated in ways I never could have imagined. Last Saturday, I went to her house bringing coffee and planning to help her with some tasks before her supposed business trip to Dallas on Monday. I wanted to have a real talk with her about getting help. I hoped we could reconnect and that she'd agree to therapy. But from the moment I arrived, everything felt off. She was defensive from the second I walked in, almost like she knew what I was going to say. When I told her I was worried, she brushed it off, claiming she was just having fun and blowing off steam. She started ranting about how ungrateful Mike had been over the years, despite all her hard work and financial support. It made me cringe because it wasn't true. Mike had supported her early in their relationship while she built her career. They'd always been equals, but now she was rewriting their history. As we talked, she was packing for her trip, and something caught my eye. She was putting away long pants. Sweatshirts, a beanie, jackets, and hiking boots, all fall weather clothes. For Dallas? In this heat? I didn't see any work clothes either, which was weird for a business trip. But what really set off alarm bells was a random Seattle Mariners baseball jersey. My friend had never cared about baseball in her life. I went home troubled, and when I told my husband about the strange packing choices, he went into detective mode. What he discovered made my blood run cold. Her daughter's biological father lived in Seattle and had a Facebook profile picture at a Mariners game. The team had home games the following week. I called her immediately, my hands shaking. "Are you really going to Dallas?" I asked. She said yes, casually, but when I pressed her about Seattle and her ex, there was a long silence. Finally, she confessed. She'd contacted him right after Mike left her, and they'd been talking more and more. Here's what you need to know about this man. He's absolute trash. He cheated on my friend while she was pregnant, kicked her out when she confronted him, and physically abused her. He'd call her horrible names and told her he wanted nothing to do with their child. I remember flying to Seattle myself to rescue her, finding her broken and pregnant. She lived with me while putting her life back together. Then she met Mike, who showed her what real love looked like. He embraced her daughter as his own, staying up during fevers, teaching her to ride a bike, reading bedtime stories. He was her real father in every way that mattered. When my friend started defending her ex, saying he'd changed and wanted to meet his daughter, I lost it. I screamed so loud I nearly lost my voice. Are you out of your mind? After everything he did to you, to us, you're going to let him back into your life? Into your daughter's life? I told her I was done. If she got on that plane to Seattle, never contact me again. She called and texted once, but I ignored it. I spent the night crying while my husband held me. He didn't say, "I told you so," or give me attitude. He just let me cry and said he was sorry. Sorry my best friend was making such destructive choices. Sorry I was caught in the middle. Sorry he couldn't fix it. The next morning, she texted saying she was sorry for lying, but that she was a big girl now and could look after herself. When I asked if she was still going to Seattle, she just said yes. I blocked her number with a heavy heart and told Mike everything. He wasn't surprised, just sad, for me losing my friend, for himself losing his wife, and most of all for their daughter. I feel like an idiot. Maybe it's selfish, but I feel betrayed. I invested so much in our friendship, stood by her through everything, only to watch her throw it all away. The memories of our friendship, once a source of joy, now feel tainted. I keep asking myself if I could have done more, even though I know it wouldn't have changed anything. She made her choice, and I had to make mine. I lost a friend, Mike lost his wife, and worst of all, a little girl just lost her mom. If there's anything I've learned from this nightmare, it's that success at work means nothing if you lose your family in the process. Some wounds just can't be healed, and some choices can't be undone. I just hope that someday, for her daughter's sake, my friend finds her way back to being the person I once knew.